The courtroom was packed. News crews, activists, diplomats, everyone wanted to see what would happen to Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the man who had captured global attention. Once hailed for standing up to corruption and defending the powerless, he now stood trial in a U.S. court, accused of violating international protocols. The air was tense. You could hear every breath, every cough, every shifting chair. Some believed the charges were real. Others whispered of political games, of powerful people who wanted him silenced. As Ibrahim entered, dressed simply and calmly, people stood, not out of obligation, but out of respect. Even the guards looked uneasy. His eyes scanned the room, not in fear, but with the quiet strength of someone who had nothing to hide. The prosecutor began aggressively, throwing bold accusations, photos, documents, videos, each trying to paint him as dangerous. But every piece felt off, twisted. Ibrahim remained silent, dignified, unmoved. Then, after a tense silence, the judge did the unthinkable. "Captain Traoré, please leave the courtroom." Gasps erupted. A journalist dropped her pen. The gallery buzzed in confusion. Was he being punished, protected, or silenced? Nobody knew what was coming next. But what happened after would change everything. Outside the courtroom, Ibrahim Traoré sat quietly in a waiting room, hands folded, eyes calm. But inside the gallery was chaos. The judge had never explained the reason. No warning, no legal precedent. People whispered, was he about to be sentenced? Were they hiding something from him? Why remove him from his own trial? A woman in the back, an elderly civil rights attorney, stood up trembling. "This isn't justice," she muttered. "This is fear." The jury sat stone-faced, yet their eyes betrayed emotion, confusion, discomfort, even guilt. Ibrahim's lead lawyer, a sharp but soft-spoken woman named Diana Kent, rose slowly. "Your Honor," she said, voice steady but fierce, "my client has the right to be present. Why has he been removed?" The judge leaned forward. His lips pressed into a tight line. "The court has made its decision. The jury will proceed." And then, behind closed doors, the doors locked. Inside, jurors looked at one another. The cameras were still running, but something had shifted. What had once been a trial had become a moment in history. And then, one juror raised her hand and asked the question that shook everyone. "Can we speak without the cameras?" Meanwhile, in the hallway, Diana stepped toward Ibrahim. She whispered something into his ear. His expression didn't change, but his hand trembled. She handed him a sealed envelope. "This was slipped to me during recess," she said. "It's not from the court, it's from one of the jurors." Ibrahim opened it slowly. Inside was a short, handwritten letter. 5 lines, no signature. "They're trying to break you, but you made me see my own cowardice. My son wanted to join the military. He said you made him believe in Africa again. I will not be part of a lie. Forgive us if we are too late." His eyes welled with tears, but not for himself, for the weight of everything he carried, for the children who looked up to him, for the people who had lost hope. Inside, the jury room grew restless. One woman pushed a file off the table. "I joined this jury thinking he was guilty," she said, "but the evidence, something's not right." The jurors stared at each other. The silence was louder than any speech. And then, someone finally said what they were all thinking. "We've been played." Inside the locked jury room, time moved slowly. Some jurors paced, others sat with heads in their hands. But one man, a former Marine named Thomas, spoke with his fists clenched on the table. "I've seen lies before," he said. "This isn't justice. This is theater." Files were passed around again. A photo of Ibrahim with armed villagers had been used against him in court. But now, with time to look closer, the truth became clearer. He wasn't leading them into violence. He was protecting them from militants, from invaders, from those who never wanted Africa to rise. Another juror, a young teacher named Amanda, flipped open a folder. "Look at the timestamp," she whispered. "This video was edited." Everyone froze. The judge, on the other side of the wall, knocked once. "Jurors, a decision must be reached within the hour." Back in the hallway, Ibrahim sat silently, his thumb brushing over the edge of the letter. A little boy walked past, holding his mother's hand. He stared at Ibrahim with wide, admiring eyes. The boy didn't say a word. He just lifted his hand and gave a small salute. Ibrahim's eyes closed. The world didn't know the truth yet, but it was coming. Inside the jury room, tension reached its peak. Amanda, the teacher, stood up and faced the others. "We need to vote, but not the way they want us to." "What do you mean?" someone asked. "We take a silent vote, not on guilt, but on truth." Each juror was given a slip of paper. No names, no talking. Just one question. "Do you believe Captain Ibrahim Traoré was set up?" One by one, they dropped their slips into a folder. The room was still. Thomas, the ex-Marine, whispered, "If this goes wrong, they'll call it misconduct." Amanda nodded. "Then let them. But I won't help bury an innocent man." When the votes were read, every single one said, "Yes, he was set up." Gasps escaped lips. One juror covered her mouth and sobbed. Suddenly the door unlocked. The judge's assistant peeked in. "The court is ready for the verdict." No one moved. Finally, Amanda stepped forward. "We have something to say," she said, voice breaking. This wasn't just about a man anymore. It was about every voiceless soul who had been wronged and silenced. And the world was about to listen. Outside, Ibrahim rose to his feet. The bailiff looked at him strangely. "You're being called back in." He walked slowly, every step heavy with history. The courtroom buzzed the moment he entered. Some people looked away in shame. Others stood in respect. Even a few reporters wiped their eyes. He returned to his seat. The judge cleared his throat. "The jury has reached a decision." Amanda, speaking for them, stood. She held no paper, no script, just truth. "Your Honor," she said, "we were shown evidence. But something felt wrong. So we asked ourselves, if this man were anyone else, would we believe this story?" She turned to Ibrahim. "Captain Traoré, you may not be from this country, but what you stand for reminded us what we were supposed to stand for." The judge looked shaken. "Do you have a verdict?" Amanda nodded. "We do." A pause. A silence so deep you could hear hearts beating. "Innocent on all charges." A second passed, then another, and then the courtroom erupted. Cheers, cries. Reporters scrambled. A woman fainted. A child in the back clapped. But Ibrahim just sat quietly. A single tear rolled down his cheek. Justice had spoken. Even though the verdict had been delivered, the cameras didn't stop. They kept rolling, zooming in on Ibrahim's face as he stood quietly, hands still, eyes glistening with unshed tears. The judge slammed the gavel, trying to regain control. "Order! Order in the court!" But order had already left the room. Reporters shouted questions. Activists cheered. A security officer had to hold back a crying woman who wanted to hug Ibrahim. "You saved my village," she screamed. "You saved my son." The courtroom wasn't just witnessing a legal decision, it was watching a shift in history. In the hallway, the young boy who had saluted Ibrahim earlier was now standing on a bench, watching him through the glass. "Mama, he's like a superhero," he whispered. His mother replied, "No, baby. He's just a man. But a brave one." Back inside, Amanda, the jury spokesperson, whispered to Ibrahim as she passed him on the way out. "They tried to erase your story," she said, "but it's louder than ever now." Ibrahim nodded once, but his heart was heavy, not with anger, but with the faces of those who had never gotten a verdict, those who were still in chains. And in that moment, he made a decision. The next morning, every major news network had the same headline: Captain Ibrahim Traoré found innocent, jury defies system. But something else began circulating, something raw, unexpected. A letter, handwritten by Ibrahim the night before the final verdict, addressed not to the judge, but to the American people. It read, "I did not come here to fight for myself. I came to stand for those whose voices are never heard in courts like these. I do not hate you. I see your fear. I see your silence. But I also saw your hearts in that jury box. Let this not be about me. Let it be about the child you ignore, the mother you overlook, the truth you rewrite. Africa is not begging. We are remembering who we are. And now, so are you." The letter went viral in hours, not because it was angry, but because it was true. Students read it aloud in classrooms. Veterans shared it with tears in their eyes. Mothers posted it on kitchen fridges. Even the judge, who had once seemed cold, was seen rereading it in his chambers. America wasn't just listening. It was weeping. A week later, just as the world started to catch its breath, a hidden piece of footage surfaced. It wasn't from a journalist or a news station. It came from a cleaning staff member who had been in the courthouse every day of the trial. She had tucked a tiny phone into her pocket, recording moments from the jury's private sessions, unaware they'd become part of history. In the video, you see Amanda crying, Thomas slamming a fist on the table, jurors arguing. But then, silence. And Amanda's voice. "If we do nothing, then we are the ones on trial." The footage wasn't legal evidence, but it was moral fire. It was played on televisions, projected on walls, even read aloud in churches. A U.S. senator tweeted, "Today I remembered why I became a public servant. Thank you, Captain Traoré." But Ibrahim didn't appear on TV. He didn't speak on podcasts. He quietly returned to his hotel room, folded his letter back into his jacket pocket, and looked out the window. Because to him, this wasn't about attention. It was about what came next, and that part was just beginning. It was 5:42 a.m. The sky was still dark when a quiet knock echoed on Ibrahim's hotel door. He opened it slowly. Standing there was Judge Albright, the same man who had ordered him out of the courtroom. No cameras, no aides, just the two of them. "I shouldn't be here," the judge whispered. "But I needed to look you in the eye." Ibrahim stepped aside and offered him a seat. For a long moment, neither man spoke. Then, with trembling hands, the judge pulled a small photograph from his wallet. "My father was a civil rights lawyer," he said. "He died fighting a case he never won." He placed the photo on the table. "I failed him," he whispered. "I didn't order you out of the courtroom to silence you. I did it to protect the jury from pressure. The truth scared people. It scared me." Ibrahim nodded slowly. But the truth walked back in. The judge wiped his eyes. "They'll never let me keep my seat after this." "I didn't come here to take anyone's seat," Ibrahim replied gently. "Just to remind the world how to use it." Outside, the sun began to rise. And inside, two men sat in quiet understanding. Later that afternoon, Ibrahim was invited to speak at a small school in D.C. It wasn't a press event, just a group of students who had followed the trial closely. Some had drawn pictures of him. Others wrote poems. But one student, a girl named Lily, walked up shyly and handed him a folded letter. "My mom asked me to give you this," she said. He opened it slowly. Inside was a message that made his hands shake. "My son was deployed overseas. He never came back. He died believing in a world that stopped believing in itself. Watching your trial gave me peace, because I saw the honor he died for in you. Thank you, Captain. Thank you for reminding us what courage looks like. Ibrahim sat still, barely able to breathe. The classroom was quiet. Tears slipped down his face. He looked at Lily. Your brother was a hero, and your mom just reminded me why I keep standing. Lily hugged him tightly. The other children followed. That night, the photo of him holding their letters went viral. But to Ibrahim, it wasn't about going viral. It was about healing something broken. One child, one mother, one soul at a time. Back in his hotel room that night, Ibrahim received a call from Burkina Faso. It was his mother. Her voice cracked with emotion. I saw you on the news. I heard the verdict. I heard your letter. He closed his eyes. Mama, I'm sorry for the pain this caused. I didn't want to become a symbol. She replied softly. You didn't become a symbol, my son. You became a mirror. What do you mean? He asked. You made the world look at itself and remember its humanity. Ibrahim said nothing. He only listened. Then she added something that shattered him. Your father would be proud. He was beaten for teaching children under the tree. They called him dangerous, like they called you. But he always said, they fear truth, because truth wakes people up. He placed a hand over his heart. I remember. Come home soon, she whispered, but not until you finished what you started. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Outside, protesters were lighting candles, not in anger but in honor. A movement had started, and Ibrahim wasn't leading it with speeches or cameras. He was leading it with silence, truth, and the love of a mother. In a quiet federal building, far from the flashing lights and shouting headlines, a small private meeting was taking place. Ibrahim had been summoned, quietly, without reporters, to speak with several senior officials. Some wore military uniforms, others were dressed in plain suits. All of them had watched the trial, and all of them were now uncomfortable. One man leaned forward. Captain, the people, they see you as a hero, but our systems don't respond well to heroes. Another added, there are concerns that your message is causing unrest, even in cities here. Ibrahim looked at them calmly. Truth doesn't cause unrest. Injustice does. The room fell silent. An older woman spoke next, her voice softer. Do you understand what you've done? You've awakened something we've tried to forget. Conscience. He looked her straight in the eye. Then I've done my duty. As he stood to leave, another official warned, you'll be watched. You may not be charged, but you'll never be left alone. Ibrahim paused in the doorway. I was born under watch. I've lived under threats, but I walk freely, because my soul is not for sale. He stepped into the hallway, knowing he had just walked out of power's most secret room, unchanged. 3 days later, the world woke up to something they hadn't seen in decades. In over 40 cities, from Ouagadougou to Oakland, millions gathered. But they weren't shouting. They weren't burning flags. They were silent. It was called the March of 1 Million, and it had no leader, no single organizer. Just people holding up signs with a single phrase, let truth speak. Elders marched beside teenagers. Police officers walked beside mothers. Children held candles. Many wore simple white shirts with Ibrahim's photo and a quote from his courtroom letter. Africa is not begging. We are remembering who we are. In Washington, D.C., the judge who once ordered Ibrahim out of the courtroom marched alone, holding a candle. Cameras followed him, but he didn't speak. Across the world, Ibrahim watched from a hotel rooftop. He said nothing, but tears streamed down his face as he whispered, They heard. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about him. It was about a broken world, finally choosing to listen. The march ended without violence, without speeches. But the silence of 1,000,000 hearts, it thundered louder than any war. The night after the marches, Ibrahim returned to his room and found something strange. A small, folded note slid under his door. It was handwritten on torn paper. No name, just shaky, uneven letters. I was one of the voices against you. I helped build the case. I thought you were dangerous. But watching you in court, hearing what the jury said, I realized I've been protecting lies. I have a daughter. I don't want her growing up in a world where truth gets silenced. I'm sorry. I can't undo what I did. But I can tell the truth now. I'm going to come forward. Someone you forgave before you knew their name. Ibrahim sat on the edge of his bed, holding the note like it was made of glass. He didn't cry loudly. Just a quiet breath and a hand over his heart. Forgiveness. Even before justice. Even before names. Outside, the wind moved gently through the streets. A quiet reminder that sometimes the greatest revolutions begin not with anger, but with mercy. And Ibrahim knew in that moment that something far bigger than a verdict had begun. A week after the marches, the U.S. Supreme Court held a private panel to discuss systemic reform. The meeting was not open to the public, but something unusual happened. One chair at the end of the table had a white placard. It didn't say justice or representative. It said, reserved, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Ibrahim wasn't present. The chair stayed empty. That empty seat began trending worldwide. Commentators tried to guess why he hadn't shown up, but those closest to him knew the truth. He wasn't seeking a seat at the table. He was trying to rebuild the table itself, for those who had never even been invited. Later, in a small press statement, Ibrahim simply said, "Justice cannot be shared by invitation. It must be built from the ground up." That line was etched onto murals in Harlem, Paris, Accra, and Johannesburg. Children memorized it in classrooms. Artists painted it in bold strokes. And yet, Ibrahim stayed quiet. No media tour, no interviews. Just a man walking through neighborhoods, listening, watching. An empty chair became the fullest symbol of the world's awakening. The time had come. Ibrahim stood in front of a small gathering, not in a courtroom or at the UN, but at a youth center in Baltimore. No teleprompters, no spotlight, just a microphone, a circle of folding chairs, and real people. He began softly. "When I stood trial, I saw fear, but I also saw something greater, your hearts, waking up." He paused, locking eyes with a teenage boy in the front row. Justice doesn't come from buildings. It comes from broken people who refuse to stay broken. Someone in the audience began to cry. He continued, "I was told I would be forgotten, that history would write me as an outsider. But I was never trying to write history. I was trying to read the pain already written in yours." He looked down, his voice cracking. "If I've done anything at all, it's remind the world that dignity has no passport." The room stood in silence, then thunderous applause. But Ibrahim raised his hand gently, asking for quiet. "Don't clap for me. Clap for the moment you realized you matter." A little girl in the back whispered to her mom, "He's what hope looks like." Ibrahim packed his bags. His plane back to Burkina Faso would leave in 2 hours. The trial was over. The fire had spread. But his work wasn't finished. Just before boarding, a reporter caught up with him at the terminal. She didn't ask for an interview. She just had one question. "If you could say one last word to the world, what would it be?" He paused, looked past the cameras, past the chaos, into something much deeper, and then he whispered one word: "Awake." That clip became the most shared video in YouTube history. But back on the tarmac, as the plane took off into the orange sky, Ibrahim didn't smile. He simply closed his eyes and prayed that the world wouldn't go back to sleep. Dear viewer, if your heart is full, if your eyes are wet, if something in you feels changed, then do one small thing that echoes louder than any courtroom gavel. Leave a comment below telling us what this story awakened in you. Like this video if it made you feel something real. And most importantly, subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to the movement of truth, dignity, and justice. Because this isn't the end of a video. It's the beginning of something bigger. Let your voice rise. Let your tears mean something. Let the world know you are awake.